Hello, welcome to episode 5 of the Second String Debate Teams podcast. I am Javin.
Jace.
Alex.
Peaches.
And today, we're going to kick it off talking about, essentially ghost stories. So, can you tell everyone your, I guess we could call it sort of a supernatural experience that you had?
Tell us about how you confronted a basement.
Yeah, tell us how you were the man of the room.
Okay, so like some little fears you've had like a long time in your life. Like my parents' basement has scared the hell out of me since I was like a teenager. When I turned 13, like when did my mom? I was like 16 when I moved into the basement, I think, and like it terrified me in a way.
Wait, so you moved into a place that scared you?
Well, yeah, because I was like 16 and wanting to rebel and not live with my brother anymore because my brother had to move into my room when he got really sick, because I need to be able to see him at night to make sure he was okay. And so we moved in, and then once he kind of like got to the point where he could take care of himself again type deal, we didn't have to make sure he was okay, I moved down to the basement. And my mom had a sewing room down there, and I cleared all her stuff out while she was deployed. And moved my room into there because I was just like, fuck no, I'm living in the basement now. Like, you can't tell me what to do when you're thousands of miles away from me, Mom. Actually, I realized I did a lot of like my beginning to start rebelling when my mom went on deployment because I was in this age. My mom like would never let me go do anything when I was younger because she knew I was gonna get into trouble. And then this motherfucker entered into my life, and like I think you had already known me. She got we're going on the craziest tangent at this point.
So you moved down into the basement.
I moved into the basement.
And you had been,
I had this dream.
A ghost.
I had this dream about this old woman in my basement. And you know those dreams that like, you're just laying in your bed and you can tell you're shaking and you're like half awake and
That's
half
called
asleep.
sleep paralysis.
It fucking is terrifying.
Yeah.
And I thought there was this like old woman standing over me with a dead kid. And I remember it like so vividly. Like to this day, I can still tell you what this lady looks like. And I remember another time I had kind of along the same things with just these glowing eyes through the glass because we had this like glass door of like going through. And
Sorry, we're passing notes in class. Continue, Jace.
yeah, you guys are just like
No, we're all listening.
But anyway, so like I got scared in my basement, right? And I've started like now that I'm getting older, I'm like starting to think like why does that stuff like I want explanations of why something might terrify me or like why I'm uncomfortable, and I've been trying to like face these like fears in a way and just realizing like I don't give a shit anymore because I'm at that age, and I was under the influence a little bit. I'd been drinking, and I go down in the basement.
Wait, when was this?
This was like a month and a half ago,
Maybe less.
Maybe less. And dude, I just like get this urge in me because Javin's sister, we were dog sitting the house, and I was just like, you know what, that room kind of scares me, but like, fuck this basement. Like, I'm not gonna be scared of this shit anymore. I'm a grown ass man. There is no ghost that's gonna fucking attack me. So I just run in there, and I'm just like, hey, if there's a demon in here, come at me, motherfucker. And I'm just like screaming in the basement, trying to get like anything to do something.
And
like, I am just down there, just like ripping into nothing, like just going at it. And
were you ripping into nothing?
That's okay. So that's what we're getting at, though. Have you guys had any type of like supernatural experience to the point where like you do believe in that? Because I haven't had anything that stands out to me enough to where I could sit there and be like, okay, this is why I am because of it, or scared because of it.
So I have two. I have one that was actually scary and one that was not. I'll go with the scary one since you brought up demons. So me and my ex, we were on a family trip to Nyack, New York, which is just right outside of Manhattan. And it's kind of known as being like a spiritual area. Like way back when, there was a lot of like witches and that type of occultish activity around that area. And so we went
still in that time frame. Like,
no, I'm talking like the 1700s or whatever.
Because like Manitou is known for being super into it still.
So, anyways, we're going to visit a professor of a Christian college.
Okay.
So we're all driving down there, and it's me, my ex, her mom, her cousin, who was ex-military, and I think their sister. Her sister. Anyways, so her cousin is just a normal ex-military guy, kind of quiet, probably saw some shit, never really wanted to talk about it. But as we're driving as we're getting closer and closer to New York, he starts getting like weird and like just I can't really put it into words, like more aggressive.
Okay.
That he's not an aggressive person at all. I've never seen this guy even raise his voice. And he starts getting aggressive to everybody, but not like too bad, just like
Kind of
okay,
standoffish.
kinda, but also like, maybe he's just like grumpy because he's hungry and he's been in a car for 8 hours.
Yeah.
Like it was you could chalk it up to that. It wasn't like over the top anything. So anyways, we keep getting closer to this place, and he still starts getting more and more weird and a little bit more aggressive in like just how he interacts with people. And so we finally get there, and when we walk into their house, the professor's house, it was like a light switch. Like he just became very unaccommodating, very confrontational and aggressive. And we were just like, man, this is really fucking weird. And so like a day and a half goes on, and he's like a completely different person. Like I'd never seen him before. We're kind of talking about it. Like it's getting to the point where like we're all kind of taking a side, being like, what do we need to do about this? Like, do we need to take him to like a hospital? Like seriously, we're like, he's getting very aggressive and confrontational. I can't remember the exact things that he was doing, but it was enough that I remember we're all like, okay, seriously, do we need to get him medical attention? Because again, like we said, he had been in the service and he didn't really talk about it, so we're thinking like, maybe he just snapped or something like that. So anyways, we're talking about this, and then we talked to the professor, who was also not a priest. What is the Christian version? Pastor, yeah. So we're talking to him, and he's like, when you walked in, I just felt like the room chill. He's like, physically felt the room chill, and he didn't know any of this because we didn't say anything to him when we got there. But he's like, as soon as he walked in the room, I just felt this like cold energy around him, and I was like, wow, that's that's weird. We're kind of talking about it, and then out of nowhere, he just like puts his chest out, gets like as big as he possibly can, and starts screaming in gibberish, like straight up gibberish, like words that don't exist at all. Like fucking tongues are coming out of him. He's like all big and stuff. And so the pastor starts like doing a blessing on him. And as he's doing the blessing on him, he gets even more and more aggressive. And it's like, it's actually freaky to see someone like screaming and speaking tongues like as loud as they possibly can. So anyways, my ex's mom finally decides like, okay, we need to get him out of here because there's little kids. Like this isn't safe. So she's like, I'm going to drive him back home because he's got, his VA benefits, whatever. So she's like, I'm going to take him home. We're going to get him some help or something. Like we're pretty sure there's like something really serious is going on. So she takes him, and apparently from her point of view, she was like, as we started getting further and further away from that house, he started returning more and more back to normal. And so by the time they got home, he was like completely normal again. But this is the creepy part. The night he left, because he left at like 8 o'clock at night, but because this was like a priest, me and my girlfriend weren't allowed to sleep together. So I had to sleep on the couch, which is where all of that had happened.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, so he left at like 8 o'clock at night. It's like 10 o'clock. Everybody's gone to bed. And I'm like laying on the couch. And I swear to God, I felt like a hand actually grabbed my throat and like was squeezing it to the point where I couldn't breathe. And I tried to start like rehearsing prayers, and I couldn't move my mouth. My mouth was like mush. I could not form the words to the prayer. Yeah. Like, so I bolted up, got out of bed, ran into the room where my girlfriend was, and I slept with her the rest of the night. And then I guess unbeknownst to me, the priest had like put holy water throughout the rest of the house. He just didn't do it in the living room. And he told me that the next day, and I'm like, holy shit. And I told him my experience, and he was like,
Did you tell him not to do a half-ass job?
Yeah.
Like, God.
Why would you not do
Yeah.
it there?
But
I think a super
anyways,
soaker do that.
the point was like, even he was like, that's the most severe thing I've ever seen, like spiritual wise. And I'm like,
This is a first for you as well.
yeah, pretty much.
I already know we're all in the same boat.
Yeah.
No, but that was freaky because it wasn't like I felt the pressure on my throat squeezing, and then the fact that I couldn't move my lips. Like I wasn't even close to being asleep. It wasn't like paralysis. I was like literally just laying there, and then I just felt something grab me. Like that one scared the crap out
How
of
old
me.
are you?
23?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that one freaked me out.
Yeah.
Wow. Damn. Okay.
Yeah. I've had something somewhat similar to that as far as like the physical aspect of it. So when I was well, CJ and Jace remember this house that I lived in with my brother-in-law and my sister. And the basement just had kind of a weird vibe to it. At least it always did to me. I never felt like comfortable down there. And slowly over the time that we lived there, just like bizarre things happened throughout the house. Like at first, the first thing I remember happening is I came home and my sister was just terrified. And we were like, what happened? And she had said that this was in like November, so all the windows were shut in the house. And upstairs there was 2 adjacent bedrooms. And so in the summertime, the wind would catch a lot and cause the doors to slam.
Yeah.
But there was no windows open, nothing. Bree's sitting on the couch watching TV, and they both just slam shut. And so she's like, that was weird. And, you know, like me and my brother-in-law were like, no, there has to be an explanation, this and that and the other. And then a couple nights later, Rodney and I were up late drinking, and we were down in the basement kind of chatting or whatever. And we were actually talking about God, which makes this even kind of more bizarre. And it just sounded like from upstairs in the kitchen, somebody threw like 100 plates into the sink and broke them. We were like, what the fuck? And we run upstairs and there's nothing. Brianna's asleep. The dogs are asleep. So we're like, that's kind of inexplainable. And then a couple nights after that, I go to bed, and my room in the basement, it was a pretty big, like, rectangular room. My bed was dead in the center. And I go to bed, and I have this dream. And I wake up in the dream, and I feel like the only way I can explain it is like really, really inebriated, like super drunk kind of. And so I like get out of bed, and I don't understand why I feel like this. And so I'm like, what the hell? And I go and I walk upstairs, and I see my brother-in-law and my sister sitting on the couch. And I'm like, hey guys, I don't know what's going on. I need help, blah, 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 blah. And they both just like, you know, in the dream, they like both pan over to me like instantaneously. That creepy slow. And my sister doesn't say anything. And my brother-in-law just goes, you're fine. Go to bed. And I was like okay.
Body?
Yeah, like just super like, you know, monotone. And I was like, okay. And so I walk back down and I go to sleep. And this is the only time in my life that I have had the dream within a dream experience.
That's weird.
And so I go to sleep and I wake up again in an even deeper dream. But at this point, I wake up and the TV in my room is just full on static and 100% volume.
Like you are actually awake.
No, at this point, I am just like...
Second dream.
Yeah, second dream. Like this is now the second dream. And so at this point was the first time this is where I think I felt kind of what Alex felt, where like you can kind of move, but it's like just this sloppy, like you're not actually doing anything.
Like punching in a dream.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And like so in this second dream, I like got out of my bed and I crawled along the bed, like worm style. And I reached up to turn off the TV. And when I did that, the TV changed to like this, like really like kind of like grimy, like 80s kind of punk style like image on the TV of this dude like in a like leather jacket, like real ominous looking, you know. And there's just like this soundtrack of this fucking just nasty fucking metal playing. And I'm like reaching to like turn it off, and the subtitles start coming on the TV. And it says, I am here, you must fear me, you cannot escape me. And I felt in my back like these like nails, you know? and then I felt a pull, and I woke up all the way across my room.
Like you actually woke up.
Yes,
like
I
that.
woke up and I was not in my bed. I was on the floor, like not like I fell out of bed.
Like
Like I was several feet, like almost in my closet.
Okay, that was a long room. Too.
Yes.
It was probably like a 20-foot long.
Dude, I woke up about, I would say anywhere between 4 or 5 feet away from my bed. So like if I would have fallen off, I would have been next to like the nightstand.
Mhm.
I was like way over there.
out.
And I woke up and I have never been that dude. I opened every fucking door, turned on every light in the house, dude. I was fucking beside myself, dude. That scared the absolute shit out of me.
Good God.
And I like the weird thing is like it never. We moved out of that house shortly after that, and I would say that was probably the last of like my
Like paranormal.
yeah, like
activities.
something that ever.
Well, didn't you say that one time, like what were they called, like TRX things?
No, that I found out that Rodney was actually fucking with me on that one.
Oh, okay.
He was every time he would come down to the basement, or he knew I was coming home, he'd go and like mess with the TRX bands, and then run upstairs.
Dude, for the I remember you telling me for the longest time, like, man, those things were just like spinning,
Yeah.
like moving. It's like, what?
I hated it, dude, because he didn't fess up to that until we moved out of the house. He was like, "Oh yeah, dude." He was like, "I was doing that all the time."
Is there a possibility that Rodney pulled you out of bed though?
No.
Just like left you there.
My thought when you said that when you were out of bed is that you got abducted by an alien. They were just too lazy to put you back on bed.
they just missed.
Like, yeah, they just, like,
really new at this.
This guy's got it. Somebody get this dude a show.
They just dropped me down. Pow.
Yeah, like, fuck this kid.
Ooh, that could. What do you think that maybe paranormal activity could just be tied to like alien activity?
Oh, I think there's
No,
definitely.
no.
I think some of it could be. I don't think
Because
all of it.
I'm not spiritual or religious in any means. So like any way you want to.
Well, I have another story too. That if it's aliens.
Peaches, do you have?
Yeah.
I have a lot.
Do you have anyone you want to share?
I don't want to go too in depth with my own personal demons.
Let's just touch the tip of it.
Just for a second,
Just rub it.
just see how
See
it
what
feels.
it's like.
Okay.
Ouch, you're on my hair.
No, so my wife calls me. She says I have a third eye that's very open, very sensitive. Yeah,
That's not where it
right.
is.
No, that's not where it is. You gotta go down lower.
Farther south, bud.
There you go. You're going there. Move to the back now.
On a real note, though, like your dick is the size of that thing from Star Wars that pops out the eye, the hand. You know, like that is your dick. Like I can see it.
What the fuck?
Oh my god! Do you remember when you saw me naked for the first time?
Yes.
I would, dude. Alex used to just hang out in his apartment naked, and he'd like invite you over. He'd be like, "Yep." And the first time
Dude,
I
he was
showed up
trying to
there,
be so nice about it though.
I was just like,
Like,
yeah.
No, my first time seeing him naked, he was trying to be so modest. He fell asleep and took a nap. His ex-girlfriend was belligerently drunk, thought he was dead for some reason, called me, and my then girlfriend, Pauline, was like, "You need to come pick me up, Alex is dying." And I was like, "You sound drunk." Okay, so I go and I pick her up, and when the doors are closed, Alex is pretty much a nudist.
Yeah.
He doesn't like to wear clothes. So he opens up the door because he knows Pauline and I are there. So he's cracking it like, "Annie, you're okay, blah, blah, blah." Dude, she like Van Damme's the door down. And Alex was just like, "Well, here's my penis." And I'm like, "Hi, Alex."
Hey.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but continue on with your.
Oh, yeah. Anyways, I'll
You
share
definitely told me some stories.
oh, yeah, I have a shit ton of them.
Yeah, but we're close friends.
Yeah, that's different.
Well,
yeah.
right now we're
I'll-
kind of far. That's better.
Anyways, so I don't know how to respond to that except I want to be a part of it. So, anyways, can you do that this entire time? I want to flip.
There we go.
Grabbing my toes.
I want this
That's
moment.
probably the screen capture for this.
Don't be grabbing my toes.
Dumb bitch.
But yeah, when you tend to talk to people about these things, whether they're going through something themselves or not, you know, you tend to get that whole "you're crazy, there's got to be another rational explanation, whatever you're going through is not really happening, blah blah blah." You know, because we've always met that one person who's like, "What? I'm a vampire," or something like that. And you're just like, "No, you're not." But yeah, so Pauline does say that I have a third eye. Alex found it. And I've been told that I'm like clairvoyant, things like that. But some of the things that I do they are kind of weird. I'm not gonna lie. So from like a creepy end to like just sort of like an unexplainable end. We had this friend, and I don't want to release her name, but
her name's in the description. So.
It's not going to be in the description for the family's sake. But we just one day randomly, I texted Pauline. I was like, "Hey, how's so and so's mom?" And she was like, "I don't know." I was like, "Well, can you ask so and so how her mom's doing right now?" And she was like, "Okay." And then I got a text back like, "She died this morning." And I was like, "Yeah, that's fucking weird." All right, cool. Kind of creepy, but at the same time, you're like, how the fuck, So like, even from my perspective, right, you're kind of like, that's weird. I had this other weird thing when we first moved into our house. I told Pauline, I was like, dude, we have several entities here. One of them is a cat. She's like, what do you mean? It's like, one of them is a cat, and I got to not just see his shadow today, I got to see him. And he is very big, very animated. Like almost like a cartoon cat. He's like really big, like the size of like. Are
we talking like what's that movie?
Garfield.
No, I was thinking Alice in Wonderland, like the.
The Cheshire Cat. No, not quite like that. He's like the size of like probably a Labrador.
Okay.
And
so basically a cougar.
Yeah, but except he sort of kind of just looks like Tom from Tom and Jerry.
Did you have a mountain lion sneak into your house?
That's
what I'm wondering.
No. So
CJ, you're not seeing these.
All right, so Javin can actually attest to this because Nico, my dog, sees him too, and I sent Javin a video of a really weird experience where Nico was looking at the cat. The video you can't see anything, but Nico was looking at the cat, and the cat likes to tease. He's very ornery, and in the video. I'm filming Nico, and I was like, so it's like right here, we're on the couch, and the cat's over here, and I'm filming Nico's head, and I'm like, I know the cat's teasing you, but I think he just moved behind the couch, which is like right here, and I flash over, to kind of show everybody where my dog is looking, and I go back down to Nico, and he's like looking right here behind the couch. I was like, okay, that's weird. All right, maybe I'm not just playing tricks on myself, right? But what got even more weird is we have another friend who also claims to have these same abilities, right? And she gets over to the house and she tells Pauline, she's like, you guys have a big yellow dog. Pauline's like, excuse me? She's like, no, like an entity, but it's showing itself to me as almost like a dog. It's kind of big. It's yellow with spots. And Pauline immediately texted me and she goes, so-and-so just told me that they saw a dog. And I was like, it's not a dog, it's a cat. Did she say yellow with, he has it's almost like triangles. It's triangles that are black but have an outline of silver. I was like, ask her, was it a yellow cat with silver black dots? And she was like, yeah, that's exactly it. I was like, okay, that's also kind of weird that other people are coming into my house and saying they're seeing the same exact thing that I'm seeing, right? So it's kind of weird in so far as like experiences, right? But here's the funny thing. A lot of these types of things are actually very common. Now, there is a scientific explanation behind this phenomenon called sleep paralysis. If you guys haven't already, go on to Netflix, look up the documentary called Nightmare. I think you watched it.
I have not.
Okay.
I feel like I need to watch this now.
Yeah, it's a documentary on sleep paralysis and different people who have seen it. And what you're going to see is several trends. So, Jace, let's go back to your story with the old woman.
Mm-hmm.
And sleep paralysis has been throughout history.
Mm-hmm.
And throughout all these different cultures. So we're Gaelic, Japanese, Chinese, European, all these different areas all have had these phenomenons of sleep paralysis. One of the reoccurring entities that everybody is saying is actually a lady called the hag or the old hag. I think and don't correct me, I didn't do a whole lot of research before I got into this. So, if I need to be corrected, please
That
comment
actually
below.
brings up a fair point. This is strictly entertainment value. We are not experts in anything.
Nothing. And if you see something that we have said in here and you know it to be factually incorrect, please tell us, because we'd rather have
Comment down
that
below.
than just keep spouting out nonsense.
Yeah, I'm okay with being corrected, but I think it's actually from the Gaelic culture is the one that actually mentions the old hag. And it is an older woman that comes in, and she's one of the people who helps with this sleep paralysis, right? So when you're going through sleep paralysis, again, there is a scientific explanation behind it. We're not going to go over that today.
Or will we?
Probably not.
Are you trying to tell me to shut up?
No, I mean, I think it's a good topic to cover.
I like how there's always just a
Yeah.
little bit of hostility
Yeah.
between you two.
Yeah,
Just
you two,
enough.
You two always like are.
I want you guys to
Yeah.
just kiss in an episode.
But
Sorry, we're
I mean, we can, but I gotta be honest, I probably gotta look it up. But there's this woman called the old hag. So when you're going through sleep paralysis, you're sort of in this state between being awake and being asleep. But what you're really experiencing is the rapid eye movement of the actual sleep process, right? And when you go into the REM process of sleeping, you actually do essentially become paralyzed. And during that REM movement, you can somewhat be conscious, which is where you get this sleep paralysis from. So there is a scientific explanation behind it, right? You're not getting enough sleep, you're stressed, you sleep on your side, or I think it's sleep on your back is one of the things that can cause it, right? So there's your scientific explanation behind it. But there's other different things out there, right? So like the cat, for example, has also been throughout many cultures. The cat is actually the one who causes the suffocating experience that a lot of people who have sleep paralysis go through. And again, you can look up old photos throughout different cultures that's going to show a cat sleeping on somebody's chest. That's what the cat does, is he's only there for one reason, and that's to fuck with you. Okay? He's not a nice spirit. So he's sleeping on your chest, he's suffocating you, he's messing with you. The first night I saw the cat I didn't get to see the full color of him, all I saw was the shadow, but the reason why I say he's very cartoony is because I was sitting on my couch and he was actively trying to get my attention. There's a corner, you guys have seen my house, outside my living room, there's a hallway and there's that little corner right there, right? He was peeking his head behind me, like very long neck, pointed triangles, ears, like poking his head around the corner the entire time, and just keep doing it, like, hey, I'm here, look at me kind of a thing, And Nico, of course, was like freaking out, like, what is this thing? And I'm over here just like, I'm not going to pay attention to you, Like, go ahead as much as you can because I'm not going to feed you that kind of energy and help you grow, right? Mm. There's another entity that's been out there. It's a man in a hat. And he's the one who is sort of like the ringleader, as they say. A lot of these people will tell you he's sort of the one that kind of controls everything, right? So you have the old hag who, from my opinion, I don't know what to make of her other than the fact that I feel like she's not really there voluntarily. We have the old hag. I don't know. I could be wrong on that. That's my personal experience. We have the cat who likes to mess with you a lot. And we have this dude in a hat. And he always shows up. And a lot of people, I've only ever really seen him alone. Never really seen him with other people. A lot of other people say that he actually shows up with other people around him. Like he shows up with like groupies, basically.
The man in the hat.
The man in the hat.
That's crazy because I actually had an experience with the man in the hat when I was really little.
And we're not talking a hat. We're talking, I bet it was like.
Yeah, it was.
So and these stories or these characters, if you will, they transcend like different cultures.
They do.
Wow.
Yes. Many other cultures have all talked about.
And it's all kind of the
entity.
same, like, different names for them, but it's always like the same theme of like the man in the hat or the old woman or the...
Well, and I forget what it stands for, but like nightmare is an actual translation, like, I don't even want to try to remember what the translation is, but like nightmare in and of itself is a translation that actually was derived directly from sleep paralysis, for those who don't know. It's from an old tradition, and I can't remember what it was exactly called, but they called it like mare or something like that. And that's how we, English speaking, got the word nightmare, is actually from sleep paralysis, basically. It's because of this old entity that they used to call the old hag. I could be wrong on that. Let me know in the comments if I'm wrong. But, so with that being said, I kind of want to go back to you. Real quick.
I'm here.
Okay. All right. So you said, do you believe that anything that's happened in the past would hold any sort of value to you, or are you just sort of trying to push it away like it's not real, I'm going to overcome this?
In the sense of like what I said about yelling at
Confronting the demon?
confronting
Yeah.
I think in that sense I had just reached the point of like, hey, I'm tired of being scared of things. I'm tired of being nervous about this and that. I'm tired of how maybe like people perceive me, type like that. And I was like, you know what? I'm sick of this bullshit. Like, I'm sick of feeling the way I do just because I'm X, Y, and Z, you know? And I was just like, why am I fucking scared of something that I don't even know if it's real or not, and I've had no experience with?
Yeah.
And you know that it's weird that you brought up the old hag. I had no idea. Like, that was my one memorable experience with sleep paralysis, or, you know, if that's what was happening to me, I guess, which, you know, if that's, from what you described, that's what it sounds like, but I'm not going to start saying, like, oh, I had this, blah, blah, blah. You know? But, like, that, it's weird that when I had that experience and it was an old woman, that is something that multiple people have said is a thing, you know? So, you know, there's, you know, that might have some, like, validity in the sense, but at the same time, it's still that thing of like, I don't have the answer for it, so I don't know if I'm something that's going to scare me.
Then I think there's also the difference, like, yeah, sleep paralysis is a thing, and you can definitely experience some creepy things with it, but you can also experience some comedic things. Like, one of my times that I had sleep paralysis, I was laying on my back in bed, and I definitely realized I'm in sleep paralysis, because, like, in my mind, I'm kind of dreaming that I'm walking down a hallway at school, and there's a banana peel on the floor. And, like, cartoony as fuck. Like, in my dream, I step on the banana peel, and my leg goes, like, shooting out from under me, and I fall on my back. Well, in that moment, as I'm, like, dreaming that, my leg, like, without me doing it, just, like, shoots up in the air underneath the pillows and blankets and stuff. And I'm like, oh, I did not make my leg do that, but in my dream, I dreamt I slipped on a banana peel, and my leg just followed that action like it was actually happening.
Wow.
That's weird. That's weird how, like, it's almost like subconscious, I feel like, but maybe not in the same sense.
Yeah, because it's definitely an altered state of consciousness for sure.
It's weird how that kind of can relate in a way.
Yeah.
So I used to, like, experience what I thought was essentially sleep paralysis a lot, but I would never see any of the, like, figures or anything that most people talk about, but I would always have the feeling of, like, you know, something on my chest, not able to breathe, not able to move, speak, and be in, like, basically just an altered state of consciousness where, like, I was looking out onto my room, but I knew that it didn't feel right, and I felt like I was in danger. And I used to get this a lot, you know, a couple of years ago, and I think that was just because I drank too much back then, honestly. But speaking of, like, comedic sleep paralysis, it happened to me one time when we were getting ready to jump, and I was rigged up in my harness and everything. And a lot of the times when you're waiting for the plane for 5-6 hours, you'll just get off the bench and you just sleep flat on the ground. And I'm sleeping on my belly, and I hear like, you know, left door, stand up. And I'm completely paralyzed. I cannot speak. I cannot move. I'm just like, and I'm getting screamed at, like, stand up. And I'm like, I can't, you know? And, like, finally, like, it kind of, like, you know, I shifted back into, like, actually being able to, like, move my body and stuff. But that was one of the weirdest things that has ever, because I was completely out of control of my body. I was like, I'd love to stand up because this is very strange, but I cannot.
Yeah, it's the weirdest thing when people talk about sleep paralysis, you know, there's a lot of commonalities between it. And one of them is just like this overwhelming sense of fear and not being able to do anything about it.
Yeah, it's like an anxiety attack almost. Like when you're really in, like, the heat of an anxiety attack and you're, like, completely irrational. Yeah. That's the feeling I would always have of, like, this is it, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely, I mean, it's a real thing that's out there. And I don't know, for me, I think we as humans seek too much to understand everything, you know, and we've seen this major disconnect between And I'm not even going to say like religion. All right. I'm going to say more like theology in general or philosophy in general. We've seen this major disconnect between that and science, because we as humans, we're sort of like fickle. Like we're not going to believe it unless we can sort of try to understand it.
Yeah, I mean, that's this. I mean, just, at least in my extent, I felt the same way about religion when we all grew up, at least me, you, and Kevin, going to a private school.
Yeah.
My parents or my mom, not apparently, is religious. My dad, maybe not as much, or at least just isn't vocal about it.
Yeah.
But like, that's how I was raised. And it's the older I got, the more I was just like, well, there's not really, like, in my opinion, answers to this. Because when I would ask a teacher about something, that is not explainable, they'd be like, oh, you just have to have faith. Blah blah, and then you start seeing all these, in my opinion, this is my opinion, like gaps. It's just like, why is X, Y, and Z like this? Oh, you just gotta have faith. Blah blah. Like, and even on the sense, like I've said about like, I've never felt like an entity type deal. I've never felt confirmed like a spiritual type deal either, of where maybe I am projecting this in my head, of like I feel this,
Yeah.
But I've never had something to where I was like, nope, for sure, X, Y, and Z. I know that this happened.
I'll give you an example of that building up slowly over time. Because I think a lot of people's ghost stories, the ones that are sensationalized, are like, we heard all these crashing in the bathroom or whatever, and like we went out there and, plates are broken, whatever. So, and I find it ironic that, or not ironic, but kind of interesting that where this story I'm about to tell you happened is right down the street from where you live now.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yep.
So when I first moved to Colorado, I got an apartment, which is really just down the street from Peach's house. And so we move in and we have 2 cats. And we had this cat that when you would open the fridge, if you left it open and you didn't like pay attention to her, she would jump into the fridge. And you wouldn't realize she was in there because she'd like jump in and just kind of sit down. And you close the door, and like a half hour later, you'd hear like in the fridge.
And it had just been like hanging out.
Yeah,
How the hell would you not notice a cat just being like?
Well, she was little. She was only like this big, and she'd
okay.
like jump into and like hide behind the milk or whatever. So she would do this a lot, and we started noticing that like the fridge dial just kept spontaneously changing from like where it's supposed to be to like frost, like basically a freezer. And so we started, kind of chalking it up to like, well, maybe when Twitch is in the fridge, she's accidentally knocking that little lever in the fridge, And so we kind of thought that for a little bit, but then I tried to do an experiment and I just like went up to it and I kind of brushed it because she wasn't a strong cat at all. I'm like, batting at it like a cat, which probably looked hilarious.
Alex is like, this is science.
Alex is a man of reason.
Writing down notes, like measuring how hard he hit it. He was like, that was a medium.
He's got a whole chart.
That's 3 pounds of pressure.
Other than actually writing it down, I did do that. I was like incremental in how harder I hit it. And then it got to the point where I'm like, you can't hit this thing and spin it. So I'm like, well, I'm going to turn the knob. And I'm like, as I'm turning the knob, I'm like, dude, even as a human, you have to put some force behind turning this knob. I'm like, well, that's weird. There's no way the cat's doing this.
Uh-huh.
So I kind of thought maybe my ex was, but then I brought it up to her and she's like, no, I'm not changing it either. I'm like, well, that's weird. And then there was one night, we had been living there for like a year. And
sounds like something's trying to kill your cat.
No, I think she was just doing that to herself. Because it wasn't like...
She's jumping in there and the temperature is getting lowered on its own.
Well, it wasn't like every time we found her in the fridge it was changed. It was like throughout
over time.
Yeah, over time we noticed.
No, that would
change.
be crazy. Dude, I think CJ and I had the same thought. Like the cat would go in there and then the temperature would dramatically decrease.
No.
I was like, damn, that's crazy. There was something trying to kill your cat.
No, but then there was this other time where we had lived in this apartment for like a year. And so, you know your apartment, the weird creaks where it makes them and stuff like that. And I walk into the kitchen and there's a 1 foot by 1 foot section of the floor that is just so much hotter than the rest of the floor. Like distinctly hotter.
Like always, or just in this?
No, just this one time.
Okay.
And I'm like, in my head, I'm thinking like, well, maybe it's a light fixture in the apartment below us that's on, and I've just for the first time noticed this. So I bring my ex over, she comes in, she stands on, she's like, yeah, that's like really warm. And like, again, like probably 20, 30 degrees warmer. But it's only in this 1 foot square. So anyways, we're just like, oh, we kind of chalk it up to like, maybe there's a light fixture underneath it. So it never happened again, it's just that one time. And then, trying to think of some of the other weird ones. Like, so at one time I was taking a poo by myself, and there's nobody in the house.
Does that implicate that you take poos in groups a lot?
Well, when you have a one bathroom, when you have a one bathroom and your girlfriend's trying to get ready.
I see what you mean. I had that.
Yeah, I've never hit that point. I think in my relationship where.
I mean, it wasn't like she was like doing her makeup
ready.
while I was pooping. It'd be more like she's in the shower while I was pooping. The point is,
nobody needs to be around when you poop, though.
That's
Okay.
true.
Anyways, the point is, like, I'm at home by myself. Is really the actual point. No windows are open, and I'm sitting on the toilet, and enough other little things that could be described in and of themselves had been happening. So me and my ex just kind of started joking that we had a ghost, not really believing it. We were just like, enough of these little weird things had happened, so we were just like saying, ironically, there was a ghost.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sitting on the toilet, and I look over, and the bathroom door starts going like this, back and forth, and so like just for shits and giggles, I'm like, haha, ghost, I see you. You can stop that now. And the moment I said it, it stopped. No more swinging back and forth. I'm like, okay, that's
If you weren't already shitting, you would have shit your pants. Type deal.
But I wasn't scared about it, because the thing is, all the little things that had been happening to that point felt very much like if there was a kid just like trying to, have fun with an adult. Just like little pranks, just these little things. It was never ominous.
Just attention, more or less.
Yeah, just attention. And then, so one of my friends, Chelsea, ended up sleeping on our couch one night, and I hadn't mentioned any of this. And she woke up and she was like, your living room just has a really weird vibe to it. And I'm like, oh yeah, because we think we have a ghost. And she's like, oh, well, okay. That's about it. But then the one part that sticks out in my mind, because it's almost like the reverse of sleep paralysis, like we've been talking about. I was laying in bed on my back, and it's like midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. We didn't have AC at the time, so we would, slide our window open in the bedroom to get some cold air coming in. But we never opened the screen. Like, why would you open your screen? It just didn't make sense. So I'm sitting in bed, and my girlfriend was on her computer watching TV or something, and I was passed out asleep. And just out of nowhere, I sit up and wake up and just grab over my head like this with no explanation. And as I grabbed, I caught my cat in midair as she was jumping out the window, which somehow the screen had opened without us hearing it or noticing it until I sat up and caught the cat in midair. And my girlfriend was sitting there next to me, like freaked out. She's like, you were dead asleep and then just went, and you had the cat.
What in the fuck?
No, you had a ghost trying to kill your cat.
Yeah.
That cat was probably just minding its own business,
damn it.
and this ghost kid was like, bow!
Well, it was a different cat, but yeah.
Ghost trying to kill both cats.
Yeah. Your
so-
ghost don't like cats.
Maybe it didn't like
This-
the attention that was going to the cat.
This is where it gets to like the funny, the crazy part. Like I said, it always seemed like a little kid just trying to get attention. And so my ex at the time worked at the Buckle. And so she was talking to one of her customers or whatever, and they got to talking about where each other lived, and she told her where we lived. And she was like, oh no shit, I used to live in that same apartment complex. And so it come to find out she was the last person to live in our apartment. And so my ex just randomly asked her, was like, hey, did you ever why did you leave? Can I ask why you left? And she's like, yeah, my son just kept waking up screaming and scared that there was a kid in his bedroom trying to play with him. And that's why they left that apartment.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
So I think everybody to some degree, whether it's as a child or moving on into your adulthood, I think everybody can agree that they've experienced something weird that you can't really put an explanation to.
Yeah.
I think science, well, let me rephrase this. I think religion is just as guilty as science when it comes to...
How dare you speak that blasphemy?
I know, right? You know, to Jason's point, you might bring up something and they're like, well, you don't have enough faith or you need to pray more versus trying to seek some sort of an answer, right? I think one of the only fields that is trying to do a good job of silliness would actually be quantum physics.
No, that's exactly where my mind goes to a lot of this stuff because fundamentally, quantum physics at the very basal level is really just saying, I mean, it says a lot of things, but particles can be in more than one place at a time. They can jump in and out of existence.
Yep.
Theoretically, I heard this described to me, quantum physics basically states that if you stood and kept running into a wall over and over and over again, at some point, all of your particles would phase in and phase out, so you would actually pass through the wall.
Yep.
You would have to do it for longer than the existence of a universe, but that's kind of the idea. Is your quantum particles are constantly
Dude, we're about to
in and out.
blow your mind with some ideas of quantum physics.
So
I know nothing about it.
I know nothing
yeah.
either, so I'm actually
yeah.
quite
So
interested.
Him and I, he's always been into the scientific field. I got into quantum physics with several different things. Like one of them, for example, is they're trying to prove that we actually do have a soul. The soul is essentially your consciousness, right? We don't really have an understanding of what that is. So what is consciousness, right? When you die, is consciousness and energy? And they're getting very close to be able to establish a legitimate theory that consciousness is an energy. And that while you're here, that energy is within you, and after you're done, that energy is dispersed.
So
Right.
that would be your soul, is your consciousness.
It could be. You know, another idea of this would be the idea of a ghost, right? Ghosts aren't dead people stuck here. Ghosts are nothing more than residual energy being dispersed.
Residual particles or something.
Energy.
And
So are you saying that what we could take as like maybe one ghost could be just multiple,
Well, I'm not sure.
Consciousness.
Or does
That kind of
energy
form.
remain?
Energy,
You know-
energy doesn't. You can't destroy energy. It's always got to be.
So that I guess
right?
the way I've always looked at that principle when they say that, like, you know, energy never dies, right? And so when you think of that from the idea of people and, you know, passing on, so the soul, if you will, is what carries on. Does that soul remain as like one portion of energy, if that makes sense, or does it dissipate?
I think if you're
Does that? I don't know if that makes sense or not, but
I think if you're like just from a fundamental physics point of view, the energy doesn't. What's that word called? It's basically the idea that everything wants to dissolve into chaos and unorder. It's like it's a thermodynamic property, whatever.
I can't
Entropy.
Entropy.
Yeah, entropy.
Okay.
It basically means that everything wants to kind of go from organized to disorganized. So energy, in a sense, like, I think that's what it would be, is it just kind of disperses into other forms. It doesn't necessarily, like, stay lumped together, because when it's lumped together, that would be your soul. I'm paraphrasing and briefly generalizing for this argument. But it would go from that to dispersing and just being like an ether of energy. It's not like defined anymore.
yeah, there's no vessel.
Yeah, so that's what I would think.
There's
Generally, if we're going on this
many
theory,
many ways I guess you
hypothesis.
could look at it. I mean, it could be entropy. It could be the idea that it's, you know, it's you, but it's not you. It's every other energy out there. You know, I mean,
Well, that gets us even crazier.
yeah.
Energy.
And I don't want to.
So can I? There was something you said earlier, CJ, that I kind of wanted to touch on. You said that, like, as humans, it's natural for us to seek or even overseek to understand everything.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's natural. You want to understand the inexplainable, you know, the why, the reason why we're here and stuff.
Okay.
So with that being brought up, do you think that it is important to like for you when you you're able to see these spirits, if you will. Like, is that something that's worth your energy to even invest in? Because is it just one of those things that you're not supposed to understand as a human? You know, like it's just the man in the hat, the cat, the old hag, things like that have been repeatedly seen throughout cultures, but there's still not like a concrete answer to. Are they just a phenomenon that's never going to be explained? They're just something that has been essentially plaguing the earth.
I don't think they're of this earth. I think there's things outside of this earth that we don't understand. I'm not quite sure how we would even begin to study it. With that being said, though, I think we're so quick to say it's not real and stop feeding that energy into it so it just goes away. So therefore it must have never been real, even though in that moment it was a very real thing. I think there could be several different explanations for it. My personal theory with it is kind of a bit of a paradox. But my personal theory with this is, you can invest enough energy to actually create something. So let's say somebody with severe depression channels enough of that energy, there's going to be some sort of manifestation of that. The energy in and of itself isn't exclusive to that one individual. What it's doing is it's essentially grabbing dispersed energy from, let's say, entropy and gathering that up into a vessel of sorts.
Well, there's some scientific evidence to something similar to what you just described, which is, do you guys know what random number generators are? So it's basically like a clock that just computer code, it randomly creates numbers, like 1 through 10.
Okay.
And so they've done experiments where they put that random number generator in a different room, and then they have somebody sit in another room, and they focus on a number that they want to appear. Now, part of the experiment is they'll do it simultaneously together, but here's the creepy part, is sometimes they'll run the number generator before the person actually visualizes a number. And nobody looks at those numbers until the person has already visualized it. And there's a statistically significant numbers that will pop up that had already been generated by a random number generator that the person envisions later.
But
So
if
it's
you're
almost
saying
like,
if it's 1 through 10, you have a 1 in 10 chance.
that's
that
what I'm
you're
saying.
gonna
It's
get that number.
statistically significant, meaning they're accounting for the fact that there's a 1 in 10 chance. So after you've accounted for that,
It's
there's
still like an anomaly of how many you're
Yeah.
getting that match up.
yeah, and so it's kind of like you were getting to, is envisioning or like bringing energy to something that can manifest. So they're basically manifesting, let's say, the number 7, statistically more significant than it should appear.
Okay.
And they're doing it in the past, which is even crazier, or in the future. And that's kind of some quantum physics stuff too.
Yeah, it's diving into it.
The quantum physics world is crazy.
The quantum physics world is spectacular. If I had the capacity, that's what I would go and study. But I digress. It brings a major point to me. Okay. If you can't understand it, doesn't make it wrong. If you can't understand it, doesn't make it intelligent or inintelligent. At the end of the day, there is something behind there, right? Let's take the madman in a comedy, right? Who's set to be crazy, yet he's speaking so much reason throughout the movie. I forget what that's called, where because of that one character, you now know something that the actual main character doesn't know.
Okay.
Right? And I actually brought the book here so I could try to somewhat refresh myself. Michael Foucault on Madness and Civilization does specifically talk about both rationality and intelligence and compares it to the opposite of that, which is irrationality and unintelligence. It's not to be discredited because you don't understand it. It's only a different type of intelligence. It's the same thing, just seen through a different lens, right? The schizophrenic who's hearing and seeing things is hearing and seeing things. They are real things. They are real manifestations. But because you don't understand it, you now seek to resolve the problem in a way that makes it easy for you. It's an imbalance of chemicals. If we correct that balance with this medication, you'll now resolve it, right? We're seeking to understand it versus embracing it. Now, don't get me wrong.
I don't know if you want to embrace schizophrenia.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I was going to say, it may not,
You're all my
I
friends.
cannot always say that because,
Everybody that's talking, get over here.
there's a case in Colorado out of a small town where somebody who's been diagnosed with schizophrenia said, go kill the mayor. And he did. Now, obviously, as human beings, we can't really rationalize that, right? But what if in some alternate universe we could see this person who heard these voices go and kill this man not actually kill him? And let's say this person, this mayor, actually turned out to do bad things. Would we then look at this person and say, you are completely irrational, we cannot justify that? Would we still hold that same opinion about it?
Yeah, I think so, because unless he's like murdering babies and drinking their blood, like
Yeah, I mean, we had
and
if he
even
was
even if he
doing
was
that.
doing that, I don't think us as a society would
No, because
see it okay.
Well, he
someone
almost
taking
becomes a
vengeance.
vigilante.
Yeah,
at that point.
exactly.
Yeah,
He-
and I
he-
still don't
at
take
that
it.
That, I'm not saying justify the act. Would we still label him as insane and irrational?
I think there would be a striking difference between how people would view it. You'd have people that would be like, he did good by killing this mayor that, was doing terrible things, and then you would have people that would still be like, no, he's crazy. He's a schizophrenic. He did this. It's kind of a cheesy reference, but I keep thinking of the end of Boondock Saints, where they have those interviews with all the people on the streets, and I know that.
hate or love.
Yeah, and they either like, oh yeah, hell yeah, they're out here, doing God's work, or they're like, oh, they're crazy motherfuckers, put them in jail.
By no means do I know a lot about psychology, because I'm in my first year of psychology class, like Psych 1000. But I have learned how much your brain, just from my professors' experiences working in the psychological field for how long, of how chemical imbalances can really just send you on to do these crazy ass things just because your body is not regulating it how it should. Type deal. And I don't think you could sit there and say that someone is justified when really it's their body not working with them in a sense type deal.
How do you feel about this? The idea, let's say we have a very schizophrenic person, right? And they have these things that are voices telling them to do things, but that's their reality.
Yeah,
So
that
to
definitely is
them-
their reality.
Yeah, so to them, it's normal to have voices telling you to do things.
Mhm.
How do you think can we as rational people who don't suffer from that disease put ourselves in a position where we see it from their perspective?
No, I don't
And
think.
do we think we condemn them without even trying to do that?
I think you can make an attempt to.
Sorry,
Do
I wanted
we-
to hear what Jace's opinion of this was first.
Oh, okay.
Damn.
God damn! All right.
Whoa. Yeah.
Make me sit on the fireplace in my house in this. Okay.
I like I said, I by no means know a lot about psychology, but I would have to say, in the sense of, in that case, I don't think there's a way to put yourself in their shoes by any means whatsoever, and I don't think that you could also sit there and justify everything they did as a person who does not study that type of lifestyle.
The average civilian.
I feel like maybe people that are psychologists and are studying that and trying to do something with it, they might have a different perception of it. But you, as the general public who does not, are going to see this guy as just not stable, off going and killing people, and that is through the media, through everything else, is going to be perceived as he's just crazy, he's uncontrollable, he's this, and that. And maybe there is some way, because it's crazy some of the medical treatments we have these days about was it a PET scan
Yeah.
can God, I just learned it's
There's a bunch of different neurological
so many different
scans.
things that you can do to the point where maybe you could see some type of relation in some sense, but I don't think there's a way for us to justify it, and I don't think there's a way to comprehend what you're going through without going through it.
Right. Do you think should we maybe look at people with those types of symptoms and try to, I don't know, it's weird, because like legally, we define it as you're either crazy in the sense that you either know what you're doing was wrong or not.
Mhm.
That's like the legal definition of it. But, you know, if you're like a severe schizophrenic person, maybe you still know it's wrong according to society. But if your daily life has been, I hear these voices and that's just how my world operates, maybe they're still operating under a logical assumption, but only based on their experiences, not normal society.
Yeah, but we
And
still
it's-
see that today. But they'll send them, to prison, and then they'll be like, okay, well, it was actually because of this, and then he'll get moved to a secured like psych ward type deal, and then it will bounce back and forth from that. At least from my understanding.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm-
now you were talking about how societally they know what they're going to do is wrong, but when you are, like you're saying, a severe schizophrenic and you're just hearing voices all the time, then society doesn't really have a bearing to you. You're seeing society completely differently than everyone else because you're an outcast of it. You're not part of society really, and you can recognize that, I think. But I think we can make an attempt to empathize with people that have those kind of mental disorders, but really, I agree with Jace. Like, you can't. You can try. You can be like, man, I feel bad for you, But unless you've had those same thoughts and you've been plagued by that same torment, then no, you really can't. I don't think you could really ever truly empathize or make a rational. I don't know. Rational.
I'm
Just to
wondering-
understand their rationale, basically.
I'm wondering, why do we, and I should preface this, I understand that, from very, very like chaotic level, there are certain rules that you must abide to, not speaking like American legal system. I'm saying humans as general. You have to act in a certain way, right? But my question would be, why do you think we seek to not only generically label something, but also create a normal, standardized way of thinking and behaving?
Because we don't
Normalize
understand. We have to normalize what we don't understand.
Okay.
Like it's the only, and that's why like kind of going back, but like Alex is talking about the legality of it. That's why we have these standards of like legality regarding whether you're crazy or not, because we have to. For those of us that don't understand it, we have to put a structure around it so that we can try to regulate it. If that
It doesn't really seem like we're seeking to understand it as much as we're seeking to.
Normalize. We're creating artificial designations.
Well, I mean, this same thing. I know I've brought up my psychology class multiple times now, but this same thing we talked about the same lines as racism. Like, how did racism start? What first created this balance of why certain people think they're better than certain people, and it got considered, at least from the article that I write my paper on, that racism was a mental disorder. That's how they wanted to classify it. So it's like they kind of built this box in a way of being like, this is what racism is.
Well, that seems more to me like a justification of treating people like.
Yeah, I mean,
Shit.
you're going to find that throughout history. I mean,
Yeah.
it still, if you look up the DSM today, being transgender, being whatever gender you want to call yourself, being gay, is still, and maybe I should look up the most recent DSM, but when I last read the DSM, they were still considered a mental illness.
About being gay.
Being gay, being transgender, not
Well-
gender fluidity, they're all considered a mental illness.
They were way back when they like the first DSM. I think they're on like 4 or 5 now.
If I'm not mistaken, it was number 4 that I read that still says.
It could be, but it could also just be I'm not fluent with the DSM currently either, but I think at least now it would probably be considered something of like atypical rather than being considered a mental disorder, just atypical, which may be something to be considered along the lines of other diagnoses potentially, but getting back to what you were kind of talking about, normalizing things and like why do we normalize things? I think society, we're a pack animal.
Mhm.
Humans are pack animals, and we realized long ago that we could accomplish more if we worked as a group than individuals, which helped our survival. So these outliers on any specific thing, I think the reason we normalize certain behaviors and we kind of outcast people who express other behaviors, we do that because, one, we know we need to work together as a group, and if you have deviant behavior, that could disrupt the harmony of the group and potentially, just from like an evolutionary point, put us at risk for our survival. And so I think that's like why we inherently normalize certain behaviors within our own societies, because we're just trying to survive. And that's why we'll like put outcasts on the left and right and demonize them or whatever, because they're potentially a threat to our survival. Is my thought.
No, that's really
Awesome.
interesting, and I think that's I think that is true, because like if you think of many ancient cultures, mental disorders, physical ailments, things like that happened, or not physical ailments, but physical disabilities, they just killed those people, and that's exactly it. They were a detriment to the survival at that time, and that's absolutely, that could still be ingrained in our brains to
I'm just
that
gonna
degree.
correct myself briefly, real quick. It wasn't the 4. It was actually the DSM-2 that homosexuality was still in there. I didn't look up any of the gender fluidity or anything like that, but at some point, homosexuality was considered mental illness.
Yeah.
I
They
don't
moved into the
know
3rd version.
if you guys know this, but I don't know what DSM is. So this
Diagnosis
Statistics
manual
or something.
It's basically the diagnosis criteria that psychologists and psychiatrists use to diagnose certain behaviors and
Really?
disorders. Yeah, it's like, does the subject appear to have this, and this? And it's like bulletins, and you're like, check. Well, you just kind of work your way through. It's just a giant book of diagnosing criteria.
It's like
Diagnostic and
WebMD for
Statistical
educators.
Manual of Mental
Okay.
Disorders.
Yeah.
so you wouldn't be the doctor.
No, I wouldn't be able to translate through it. It's WebMD for people that know what the fuck they're talking about.
Yeah,
I'd
I don't know if
be
you guys know
like,
this,
and you have AIDS.
but Javin has cured 3 of my ailments.
I am a doctor, actually. I'm 3-0 with Jason's ailments.
Yeah.
Oh shit.
What ailments?
His foot
My
was
foot.
he passed out one time.
My toes had been killing me, and I found I had a hammer toe.
Told him to change his shoes.
Boom.
Fixed it.
Fixed it. Like my shoes were pushing my toes back into themselves, creating the tendon to move out to the side.
Now, granted, while I am the doctor, he is a stubborn patient. I told him for a month. I was like, take those shoes off, bro. It has to be what's
Well,
your
I was
shoes.
wearing flip flops to the gym because it hurt to put my feet inside my shoes.
So were
I
you
only
basically
do-
wearing rock climbing shoes all day, every day?
No,
What it felt
they
like?
weren't uncomfortable. That's the thing. I was not uncomfortable in my shoes, but it was destroying my foot.
Well, that was a nice tangent.
All right, back on track.
Sorry.
So that's what the DSM is. It's a diagnosing criteria, basically.
So, man, this might take us off on a tangent. Fuck it. You'd said that you weren't sure about how gender fluidity is listed in the DSM as far as if it is a mental illness or whatnot.
Yeah.
According to that, do you think that gender fluidity to a certain degree is more than just atypical and it is some form of mental illness? Because what I have read on my own, I guess, about what gender fluidity is you can, throughout, whenever you'd like, basically, you can associate with a different gender or a different, makeup. And that, to me, does not seem healthy. Because if you don't have a grasp on what your own identity is from a day-to-day basis, I don't think that is something that should be encouraged. I think that you should absolutely be able to find yourself and things like that. Self-discovery, that's very important. But if you're just encouraging people to be like, sure, you want to be Jerry one day and you want to be Josephine the next, no, that's not healthy to a certain degree, because you're creating multiple personalities. You're creating a dichotomy in yourself.
Yeah.
The way I see it. And I could be wrong.
And I don't know if it's I don't know any people that designate themselves as gender fluid.
Nor do I.
So I can't speak totally on this, but I think ultimately the idea of gender fluidity can maybe be a phase, in the sense like when you're growing up as a kid and you're just learning yourself, like using gender fluidity as a tool to discover yourself probably isn't an unhealthy thing. I think maybe what you're getting at is someone who literally on a random day-to-day basis throughout their life continues to do that.
Yeah, and that's
And I don't know if that's a thing or not. I think maybe as you go through those cycles, you probably start to like one more than the other, and then you start to identify more with that. But I think it could also just be like Peaches has, brought up the fact that he's the feminine one in the relationship, and so I think if you're using it in that sense of like, well, sometimes I feel more masculine in these areas of my life and more feminine in these areas of my life, but we've somehow designated that as gender fluidity. Like, I don't think that's unhealthy either, to recognize like some areas of my life are this or that.
No, but I think that the difference there is like Peaches can recognize that he is, at times the feminine one in the relationship, but when he recognizes that he's not identifying as like a different sex. He's still. I guess I'm speaking on your behalf right now, but I'm assuming that you're still like, yep, I'm who I am. This is just how I.
Have you seen his underwear drawer?
I've heard that it got upgraded.
You know what? I haven't been snooping through his underwear drawer in a while.
I gotta get back. Hold on, let me write that down.
What's weird is like how you
Lots
kind of
of
brought up.
phones.
I know we brought about this in the last podcast about like feeling or not feeling feminine, but like maybe being more feminine. Like, what has defined something as feminine? What has defined something as masculine?
I think that's just like our old world standard that we're using to define those characteristics, like, cooking, cleaning. The more domesticated roles we typically just associate with feminine, and the more.
And that's the thing, like, in my relationship, me and Kelly, like, I'm the clean one. I'm the one that wants to do the dishes. Like, I'm the one that wants to clean the house, blah, blah, because, like, I like a clean house. I like the house looking good, stuff like that. Like that.
I actually agree
but I
with
don't
you.
really see that as like a feminine.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Like, your role is your role. I say that from a traditional standpoint, that men are supposed to do this, women are supposed to do this, and I'm like, I don't give a shit.
So
Yeah,
Like, if I want to go to my wife and talk to her about how my day went, like, I don't care if that by traditional standards means that I'm feminine. To me, it just means I'm me.
Yeah, I think we just use feminine, masculine roles to just generically assign characteristics of certain behaviors to, so that everybody just understands without having to explain it every single time.
So then, with that being said, like, the old world standards of cooking, cleaning, that's feminine. Working, that's masculine. What in your mind would actually be something that would be masculine and feminine, like genetically or biologically?
Well, child rearing is definitely going to be a feminine one. So that nurturing, protective thing, that's definitely going to be probably more on the feminine side. Although men would, look out for their offspring, but they may not be as nurturing.
I have to say that goes from person to person, though, because you could have a dad that's way more into being a dad than a mom is, who does the traditional motherly things.
A dad is never going to be able to give birth and release.
No, I know, like,
hormones.
to that extent. But like the nurturing and caring, like a dad could care more about his child than the mom could.
Oh no, 100%.
Eventually, but the hormones they go through a woman when she gives birth is something a man will never experience birth, nor will he experience what that mom feels. I just don't think that there's certain things that, to Alex's point, like, no, like, you're never going to be able to experience birth, and you're not going to be able to experience what happens after that. Nobody wants to experience birth, not even women. Or maybe.
I think there's some sadistic women out there who would love the pain.
Maybe.
I don't know.
I mean, that woman at 19.
Like, when you give birth, like, you're not only experiencing what's, like, the actual child coming out of you, but, you're also getting filled with hormones that men won't ever be able to.
Yeah.
And that relates back to your other point where you talked about how we seek for understanding, and there's some things that we are just somewhat incapable of understanding. And
Yeah.
to a certain degree, that's okay. I think that and the process of searching for the meaning is not that's not dangerous at all. But I think
undergoing the
undergoing the process of discovering things like that can be a little.
You can take hormones to adjust things, but it's not a natural adjustment. Your body isn't doing it on its own.
You're making this. You're making something artificial that was never intended to be. And when you do that, you're never going to get the real thing.
True. That's all I have to say.
And bye.
The main thing that I just want to get out there is, and I'm personally not going to be talking about, gender or anything like that. I'm just going to say very generically that, don't be so quick to tell somebody that they're wrong or what they're feeling is not right or not real. At the end of the day, there's things that we just can't comprehend. And just because you can't comprehend it doesn't mean that it's not real. You shouldn't be so quick to write it off as I solved it, as much as I want to understand more about it, but leaving it open-ended without necessarily a resolution other than just the understanding.
And I think
the search for the understanding at the very least.
I think even not on the understanding portion of it, but maybe just if someone is in your life that is, identifies in that type of way, is along the lines of, you might not understand it, but that doesn't mean treat them poorly because you might not understand it or might not agree with it. I see that type of stuff a lot.
Right. I think that kind of
days.
comes back to even, a lot of this is we always somehow circle around gender identity or whatever, but even mental health issues are very similar to that. Not saying that, their gender fluidity or whatever is a mental health issue, but the schizophrenic person, I'm curious what society would do if we were much more open about being schizophrenic as we are with being gay. If someone was able to just talk to you and be like, hey man, I'm schizophrenic, so all these weird behaviors that you're about to see come out of me.
Yeah, you mean if we kind of had broken down the stigma around certain mental disorders like we did with homosexuality. Once again, not saying that as a mental disorder, but that's what we had to do as a culture, is break down those stigmas to where it didn't become, it's not abnormal anymore for someone to be like, I'm gay. Okay, cool, it's Tuesday, it fucking doesn't matter, and that's how it should be. But that's an interesting point too. That should be the similar thing. You are schizophrenic, you understand that, and you're like, hey, I'm schizophrenic, so if I start doing schizophrenic things, now you know.
I'm so happy that you brought that up, because when I was saying that earlier, I was like, guys, you understand that there are certain things that we labeled as wrong that in today's society, no, if you tell somebody, dude, it's not okay to be gay, you better be willing to at least tolerate it and have a good religious belief as to why you can't agree with that. And even then, you're probably still gonna
get some backlash.
Yeah,
I think it's just it comes down a lot to use the word again, but it's stigmas. Because we don't understand it, we attach these stigmas, and until I guess really until people want to speak out about it enough, it'll never change, because that's what happened with using homosexuality as an example again. People just kept saying no, what you're doing isn't right with who I am, and you're gonna accept this.
And I mean, the downside of that is, unfortunately, when you have severe schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, some of those cases, you're just not capable of voicing your own opinions and thoughts to the public, because you physically cannot manage to do that.
Then maybe it's on behalf of those that are mentally capable to be that reasoning voice for those that can't.
Yeah. And I think, what's funny is, I think another example of this to some extent is the UFO topic and aliens. 20 years ago, if you brought it up, it was oh, Jim Bob and, these rural areas who had too many beers to drink, saw some lights in the sky, that guy's fucking crazy. And now there's it's coming out more and more, so it's not as stigmatized of a topic.
Mm-hmm.
And that comes back to like searching for understanding, and the metaphysical world too, with like ghosts and stuff, is like maybe we don't know, but we're still looking for the answer. Maybe just vocalizing the fact that we're looking for the answer is good enough.
That was a question I was going to ask you. So you had brought up earlier, both of you, how quantum physics is trying to find some of the answers for these inexplainable things. If you had to say, like, well,
I don't know if they're trying to find it. I just think that if we're going to find an answer, it's going to be as a byproduct of research in that area.
So what do you think? So say through the study of quantum physics, they are able to like explain something that people have, like sleep paralysis, like they have the concrete evident proof. Would you say that we would ever receive that?
Yeah, I think so. And honestly, sleep paralysis is a pretty well understood phenomena. The part that's not so well understood is like the idea that everybody seems to see these similar things.
Yeah.
But they've done studies on like what causes it, the physical symptoms of it. It's decently well enough understood, but it definitely doesn't address like, well, when we were awake and we saw these things.
Maybe I should rephrase that. Like if they were to have the proof of something like that, like why we see stuff sometimes when we're awake, do you think that we would be able to actually receive that and be like, okay, well now that we have this understanding, like these are just ghosts, and this is what we teach our kids now.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's just a group of particles. Like,
yeah, I think it depends on what the actual answer turns out to be. If it's something that's relatively simple for us to understand, maybe it's just like new particles that interact in this way, and that's what it is. Like maybe we can grasp that.
Okay.
But there's also the potential that what Einstein called spooky action at a distance. There's like a whole experiment for that, and he called the experiment spooky action at a distance. So maybe maybe the answer is just so complex and just so abstractly out there that our minds, while we can maybe write down a theory to explain it, our rational minds may not be able to like truly grasp what the answer actually is. Maybe we know the interactions and what causes it, but like for the average person to sit there and like truly understand what's happening, potentially we wouldn't be capable of it.
Right.
What do you think, Jace?
Dude, I don't even know at this point.
I think I'm in the
we
same-
have bounced so many times back and forth.
Yeah.
I'm just
I am just like,
I don't know. I think quantum physics is something I'm going to read more about, because it's just like it almost I feel like it is one of the way you guys talk about it is it almost relates back to the whole topic. Like I don't even think quantum physics is something that we're ever going to understand, like just from the way you guys are talking about it.
it's like very interesting that you can almost put answers on something through it. Like maybe if there is an answer that
Maybe this is it.
I think I have a way to wrap this up in a nice little bow and give you a little lesson on quantum physics.
Can I say something for you?
Yeah.
Is this the same picture
Guys.
you made us draw that one time?
Yeah, I was so lost.
You want to blow your mind, just go look up quantum physics and a study of consciousness. That is a great way to segue into what some areas of quantum physics are doing.
Okay.
So I think this experiment that I'm about to explain will, one, it's a great introduction to quantum physics, but two, I think it shows the idea that we may not, even if we know the answer, we may not be able to grasp it. So there's a famous experiment called the two-slit experiment. And in this experiment, you fire a single photon of light, which we've based, they're either particles or they're waves, like we don't know. So I guess I need to back up. If you shoot a particle through two slits, right? The particle can go through one or the other slit. So if you put a panel behind it, particles will always leave, a shadow basically of those two slits. Now, if you do that same thing with water kind of moves in a wave, right? So if you make a wave here and the water passes through the two slits, what you get on the backside is an interference pattern. So what it basically looks like is 5 bright spots and then 6 dim spots, right? Because waves, that's just how waves work, and particles work differently. So if you take a photon of light and you shoot it through the slit, I don't remember which one is which, so you can look it up. But if you shoot it through, if you shoot it through a single photon, which is a particle, you would expect to see 2 slits on the back panel, right?
Okay.
Because it's acting as a particle.
Yeah.
Well, what happens is when you actually shine, even if you only shoot 1 photon at a time, you actually end up with an interference pattern on the back. So the act of going through these 2 slits turns that particle into a wave just because it physically went through these 2 slits. So you end up with a wave pattern on the back, an interference pattern. Now, if you took a measuring device, let's say it's a camera, and you put that camera focused on one of the 2 or on both of the slits, at the exact moment that that photon passes through that slit, when you turn that camera on and you repeat this experiment, then you get the shadow of the 2 slits on the background. So the act of trying to see where the particle is when it passes through the slit changes its property from a wave to a particle.
So
And it'll behave as a particle if you're observing it.
So this is how they came up to one of their theories, that life outside of this room doesn't exist until we project our energy onto
I've
it.
always wondered, have you ever like walked through the day and you're like, man, I just hooked the corner? Like, what if Javin, who I was just talking to, like in my reality does not exist anymore until I
No,
see him?
he does exist because he has the energy, but the outside world, unless you project that energy, theoretically could not exist in the same way we see it now until we actually interact with it.
Oh, okay.
What?
That's what this study helped.
Yeah.
Huh.
Now, this is just a stoner comment. What if this whole world in reality is only my whole world in reality and you guys don't actually exist?
Oh, I've had this
That
thought
was my
many
point. Like,
times.
Guys,
Yeah,
what are we
you
like
guys
philosophy
are not
101 right now? We all live in some reality where a madman controls everything and we're all just part of his experiment.
No, I mean,
that
but
we
it
could
is-
not understand.
It's like Plato's cave, the allegory of the cave.
Sure.
Allegory of the cave?
I'm not familiar with it.
No.
Yeah, no, yeah.
It's what you've seen The Matrix.
Why are you
It's the
getting
same
at
damn
this?
thing. Because it's something you should have learned in high school. What are high schools?
I don't remember the high school.
Bro,
But
you
you
went
think
to
they're
the same high school. Who was teaching you allegory of the cave?
I taught myself technically.
Yeah.
Well, then you
Don't get mad
You
at me.
remember us in high school? If you would have told me allegory of the cave, I would have just walked away.
Emotions are high. All right, no, the allegory of the cave is simple. All right, so there's guys in a cave, and on the outside of the cave there is, or on the back side of them is a fire, and it's like a puppet show, and they're making a puppet show, and to them that's their life. One dude escapes, gets out of the cave, goes and sees world as it is, goes back down and says, guys, this is not life. They don't believe him because that's all they remember seeing. It's like The Matrix.
Oh,
All right, well, let's wrap this
Let's
up
see
real
it.
quick.
we've
So,
been at this
Jeff,
for days.
what have we talked about today?
Well, let me go back through these jumbled notes of mine for a
We have
minute.
4 minutes.
So, well, we started out with our little ghost story segment, in which we found out that Jace ain't afraid of no ghosts.
But maybe
I'm
he is
afraid
now.
no ghosts.
Are you, after those stories, are you now afraid of the basement again?
No.
Okay.
Cool.
I'll go back down there and yell at that demon again.
All right.
Dude, he's gonna go down and
He's gonna be like,
bro.
hey,
And dude, I'm gonna.
I talked
I'm
about
gonna,
you on a podcast.
I'm gonna
bitch."
come up like running up the stairs and be like, that bitch is angry.
He
He's
watched
got
the
two black
podcast and he's
eyes.
got a laptop and he's like, oh, really?
Oh, really? Oh, you're not scared.
And then we talked about sleep paralysis, and CJ had brought up the I had only written down 3, but 3 of the like entities that are
Kinda
prevalent
common.
throughout.
Technically, there's only 3, but there might be more.
The old hag, the cat, and then the man in the hat, which is just a Dr. Seuss book. And then, let's see, what else do we
Oh,
talk about?
shit. Maybe he tapped into some super consciousness and that's where all those ideas came from.
No, we're wrapping up. No.
We went back into some more paranormal stories. Alex told us about a cat that was definitely being hunted down by some paranormal
I don't know
entities.
what is going on in your house, but it is not that cat.
And then they just Alex and CJ or Peaches just kind of threw a curveball onto Jason and I with the study of quantum physics. But from there, we actually got into, I would say, our best part of the conversation, where we just kind of came into, more or less the even though we are incapable of understanding everything. I think what we could come down to is we are still in need of a little more understanding within each other.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. And how the rest of it ties together, well, that's up to you guys to figure out.
That's up to the viewer.
That's,
Once again, it's art. We can say whatever we want. All right, guys. Well, one thing we wanted to start doing at the end of every episode is just do small shout-outs for anything that we've kind of discovered recently, whether it be musicians, movies, art, whatever. We all appreciate so much that you guys are watching this, reading the blog, all of that. So I want to use this platform to also serve as exposure to other people that I feel are deserved. One guy that I want to put on blast today is a friend of mine, Tyreek. He is a hip hop artist that raps under the name Serious Black. I will put him in the description. Please go look at his music. It is wonderful, and he is just an awesome all-around person. So, anybody else have anything they would like to plug? Any music, movies, anything they saw recently that's worth the viewer's time?
I just recently did a commercial shoot with and one of the actors, but was also just like a background talent. I was talking to him, and it turns out he does custom furniture here in Denver. His name is Joe Wegner, Wegner. We'll have a link to his work in the description, but I'm talking with him about getting a custom desk made, because my editing bay is pretty sweet, but my desk is from IKEA. So hopefully he can help me out. Go check out his work, and hopefully you like it.
Yeah, that's all I had.
If you want to learn more, go read anything by any quantum physics.
You can't start there, because it can go down a rabbit hole.
All right, go look up specifically quantum physics and their research on consciousness. Okay, if you want to kind of get into the realm of what we've been talking about today, start off with them. You can also go and read some very old school philosophers like Michael Foucault and his book on madness and civilization. That's also going to give you a good foundation to understand what the hell we were talking about today. And that's really about it. So we'll do some homework, for me at least.
2 shout outs I'd like to give is to Javin Bear. His bike actually got stolen the other day out of our backyard. It was crazy. And then his bitch ass ran into my Jeep. I don't know if you guys heard about this, but Javin slid on the ice the other day coming into the house.
So we really are
like
putting people on blast.
This segment's for whatever. If Jace wants to put me on blast here while I'm sitting on the fireplace of our home, sure, fucking do that. But yes, you're right. I did crash into your Jeep. So Jason and I, we were racing like a couple of jackasses, and I hit about a 25-foot patch of ice. And I just sailed right in. There was nothing I could do. Anyway, I turned the wheel. I'm still going towards
Did you file a claim?
No, I'm gonna. Well, we don't know what we're gonna do right now.
Not yet.
Still friends though.
I wasn't even mad. I came out, I was like,
he actually came out and he was laughing. And then the best part is they were like, we told his dad this story, and Jim was like, well, what happened to your Jeep? And I was like, Jim, I just respray painted the front and carried on with my life. Like,
I have a 1990-something Grand
shout out 1998 Jeep Cherokee Sports, because those things are apparently bulletproof.
Hey, 89 through...
And when was the last year?
I don't know.
Box Cherokee, like 2002.
2002, bulletproof.
You could.
It dented my 06 LJ.
Yep. Nothing happened to my car. Not a goddamn thing.
Well, on that note, Jeep, we need some sponsorship, obviously, for these 2 jackasses.
We need replacement parts.
Just open it up. We're not looking to, climb.
Also, if anyone wants to, start a GoFundMe for me to get a chair, because this is ridiculous, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, that's not happening.
Sweetheart, I'll spoil you with a chair any day. Yeah.
I actually tried to give him a chair last time, and he still went with the Apple box. So
that's right. I'm just a glutton for punishment.
Yeah, I think
I'm just asking for money, really. I'm not going to use it for a chair.
We bought this nice coffee table though now.
We do.
We have a coffee table.
You have chairs and a coffee table.
Yeah.
If you,
Alright.
the GoFundMe would be for a rug.
Yes.
Rug.
Yeah,
That,
this thing slips too easily.
Hey.
hey, no.
Have you ever felt our squishy spot over there? we were setting up these lights and the floor is squishy over there.
Alright, I think we need to wrap this
Yeah.
up.
All right. Thanks for watching.
Guys, thanks for watching. We'll let
Appreciate
you
it.
know about the squishy spot now.